Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, DR Congo vows to find the killers of the Italian ambassador, his bodyguard and a driver. The trio were killed not far from Goma on Monday after their convoy was ambushed. It's still not clear who is behind the attack. Also, feelings are still running high in Algeria as thousands march again to mark the 2 years since the Hirak rallies that ousted former leader Abdelaziz Bouteflika. Demonstrations still want to see an overhaul of the elitist ruling system. And Kenyans give two wheels a spin as more people get on their bikes in Nairobi to avoid the coronavirus risks of travelling on public transport. But first, Italy's ambassador to DR Congo has been killed in an ambush in the east of the country. 43-year-old Luca Attanasio was shot on Monday morning and died several hours later in a UN hospital in Goma. Driver Mustafa Milambo and bodyguard Vittorio Iacovacci also died in the attack. It's not clear who's responsible, but Kinshasa's blamed the FDLR militia group. The convoy was targeted about 15 miles north of the city of Goma. Some locals say they heard the attack as it happened.
We were in our neighborhood and we heard several shots. We quickly shut our doors and remained inside. Minutes later, we went outside trying to find out what happened. People told us that white people had been abducted and taken into the park. We don't know who did this, but it's likely the kidnappers were rebels.
We walked to the place where the events happened, and people told us that rebels had abducted white people. We ask our government to bring security to our village because rebels regularly kidnap civilians, even at night. We can't sleep.
Well, DR Congo said it will do all it can to investigate. Our Clement Bonnereau tells us more.
The exact circumstances of the attack on a World Food Programme convoy in North Kivu are not yet entirely clear. According to the UN, the convoy, which was made up of 2 vehicles, was travelling from Goma to visit a school feeding programme in Rutshuru, some 60 kilometres north of Goma. Local authorities, meanwhile, say the convoy was stopped by a group of armed men who fired warning shots into the air to stop the vehicles. They then killed the World Food Programme driver and tried to lead the others into the woods, although it's not entirely clear why. And that's when guards from the nearby Virunga National Park intervened, opening fire. The assailants then retaliating with more fire, and that's when the Italian ambassador and his bodyguard were shot dead. Now, the UN says that the roads they were travelling on had been previously cleared for travel without military escorts. Local authorities, meanwhile, say the area is particularly dangerous. They also say that they were not informed of the presence of the Italian ambassador in this particular area. It's unclear who is behind the attack and whether attackers intended to kill the Italian ambassador and his bodyguard. DR Congo's government, meanwhile, condemned what it said was an ignominious attack and said it would do everything it can to identify the assailants.
Clement Bonnereau there for us. Now, thousands of people marched through Algeria's capital and other cities throughout the country on Monday to mark the 2nd anniversary of the Hirak anti-government demonstrations that forced President Abdelaziz Bouteflika from power. The rallies lost steam last March because of coronavirus restrictions, but the calls for change continue.
A familiar sight returns to Algeria. Mounting anger as protesters call for a complete makeover of the country's political system, one which is propped up by the military. The message is loud and clear. They want civilian rule.
C'est toujours le régime mafieux c'est toujours le régime mafieux qui en Algérie. Il n'y a rien eu de changement.
It was the same Hirak movement leading Monday's protests, which headed a groundswell of opposition against Abdelaziz Bouteflika in 2019, forcing the president of 20 years to step down on April 2nd that year. Algeria's parliament subsequently announced Upper House Chairman Abdelkader Ben Salah as interim president. But protesters opposed the new appointment, given Ben Salah's close ties to Bouteflika. Hundreds of thousands would continue to demonstrate in the capital, demanding the departure of the ruling elite. This despite fresh elections announced for December 12th. When polls opened, the climate was tense. Ben Salah and 5 other presidential candidates voted, but many boycotted the election, raising concerns of no independent observers. On December 13th, Prime Minister Abdelaziz Bouteflika was declared Algeria's new president. But still, protesters were unmoved. A move by the president to pardon 6,000 prisoners did little to dispel the demonstrations. But in February 2020, external factors put a halt to the surging momentum.
تم تسجيل اليوم حالة مؤكدة.
Curfews were put in place, clearing protesters off the streets and placing Algeria's workers under huge financial strain. After months of stalemate, President Tebboune, along with the military, held a referendum on changes to the constitution. But even then, the skepticism remained. And despite recently clearing the way for early polls, as well as pardoning dozens of detained pro-democracy activists, Tebboune was unable to prevent another resurgence of anger on Monday, the 2-year anniversary of the first nationwide demonstration.
Now, Niger is currently counting the votes from the weekend's presidential runoff, which should deliver its first transition of power from one democratically elected leader to another. Ruling party candidate Mohamed Bazoum is hoping to head off his challenger, former President Mahamat Ousmane. 7 election workers were killed on Sunday after their vehicle hit a landmine. Nigerians are hoping that President Mahamadou Issoufou's successor will tackle worsening security and boost the country's economy. Our correspondents tell us more.
One of outgoing President Mahamadou Issoufou's greatest achievements is the third bridge of Niamey. Measuring nearly 4 kilometres, it's part of the capital's most visible developments. It's also part of the city's infrastructure that clashes with the reality of the country's economy. Despite being an oil-producing country, Niger has ranked last in the UN Human Development Index for the last 9 years.
Da isansa in nan muka so a canza saboda yanzu in ka ɗauki isansa namu ne amma yau muna shan shi litir har 120 har 110 kenan kaga in ka tafi Nigeria zaka iska isansa in mu ne za a saida dala 35 ko dala 25 kaga wannan ba daidai bane kenan tunda isansa namu ne in an saida mu kasar waje dala 30 mu ma a saida mu dala 30.
For Massaoudou Assoumi, one of President Issoufou's followers, the country's development has been hampered by several factors.
Nous avons eu un taux de croissance de 6%, malgré le choc sécuritaire, malgré le choc climatique. Le choc sécuritaire seulement nous coûte 2 points de PIB. Malgré ces 2 chocs, nous n'avons pas renoncé, le président Issoufou n'a pas renoncé au développement. Nous avons tenu toujours à avoir un niveau d'investissement très élevé, pas moins de 300, 400, 500 milliards par an dans le budget.
Omar Chiana was a minister under Mahamadou Issoufou's presidency, but since 2017 he's aligned himself with the opposition. He says corruption has marred the outgoing president's record.
Après 10 ans de présidence du PNDS Taraya, le Niger est toujours dernier. Et l'insécurité s'est accrue et la corruption a atteint des niveaux inégalés. Dans l'affaire de l'audit du ministère de la Défense, on a parlé de 72 milliards, plus de 50 milliards. 72 milliards, vous savez, on peut construire des milliers de classes, des milliers de dispensaires et des milliers de points d'eau.
Nigerians are banking on seeing improvements to their general standard of living and are hoping that their next president can help deliver stability, transparency and economic growth.
Now, a South African man's been charged with the murder of his girlfriend and accused of paying for her assassination. Tutoko Tokozo Shoba has not yet entered a plea. Shegofatu Pule's death sparked protests against femicide and domestic abuse in 2019. The 28-year-old's body was found with multiple stab wounds. Last week, another man was sentenced to 20 years in prison after pleading guilty to murdering her. He claimed Shoba offered him 70,000 rand to kill his girlfriend. Now, coronavirus has led many Kenyans to turn to 2 wheels. Cycling used to be seen as uncool and low status, but more people are now trying to stay away from crowded public transports, and bike sales have rocketed.
Driving between trucks, buses, cars, and motorcycles, Stephen Odiambo could be a bit nervous. The 30-year-old has already had 2 accidents since he started cycling again last year. But reporters are filming him this time, so it's likely other drivers will keep their distances.
The drivers are usually careless. They can push you off the road. They don't care about you. But I just look at the pros and cons. I'm much safer on a bicycle. I'm social distancing.
That's the reason the video editor took up biking again, COVID-19. In the capital's public transportation, it's almost impossible to keep social distancing. Biking seems like the best option to Stephen and many others. Since the epidemic started, business has been good for Jimmy Karumba, who owns a bike shop. His sales rose by 50%.
People wanted to cycle more, just to keep fit, to commute from work from point A to point B.
Now Nairobi cyclists are on a mission. They want lanes, and many have been riding monthly together to push for more safety on the roads. 69 people died cycling here last year. To those who believe building routes costs too much, the truth is the exact opposite. Lanes allow people to get to work fast, which could save some $1 billion lost due to traffic jams every year.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us. Do so again if you can. Take care.